Fear not, citizens. Hope has arrived because we are back with more My Hero Academia. We're covering chapter 350, which is a pretty big milestone. As always, this is the Amateur Otaku Podcast. We're talking all things My Hero Academia, all things manga and anime in general. Joining me, as always, is the evil punster villain himself, the emblem maniac, Isak Wolf. Isaac, how you doing, my guy?
It's going good. I'm just exhausted as usual.
I know, right? It's been a busy day for both of us. Covering Toonami, covering My Hero. It's fun though. It's real fun.
Yeah, renovated the office.
Oh, nice, nice. Yeah, you showed a picture of that in
Yeah,
the private chat, so that was great. So, for those of you who might be new, this is a spoiler discussion of My Hero Academia chapter 350. So if you are an anime only, one, you're in for a treat when the anime comes back this year, because that might be the best arc in the entire series. But two, that means you're gonna have to leave this conversation and we'll talk about this plot point again when the anime comes out. So that's your spoiler warning. We'll catch you guys next time. Have it awesome. For those of you who are staying, this is My Hero Academia chapter 350. Back chapter. It's the Dabi origin story, right? We kind of had an
yeah,
idea of what happened with Toya, but we have great detail of what happened with Toya Todoroki. And Isaac, this was brutal to read. Like I don't know about you, but I was this might be the best chapter in a long time. Like since
yeah,
Deku
absolutely,
left UA.
absolutely. And it makes me wonder somewhat of. Did you see me send a link of a theory that he sort of have that people wonder if Dabby has sort of like a Phoenix Kirk?
I didn't get a chance to read the entire thing. It was on comicbookresources.com. But can you kind
Yes.
of just like break down what that theory was?
They, I can take up the article again because I can't recall exactly
Sure.
because they sort of because one, which I can agree with how even when it predates this chapter is that how did he survive with all those marks, so to speak?
Mm-hmm.
And then they say, what's okay. Uh, One Twitter user, Triple Tivoli in 2001, suggested Dabis Kirk has more to it than original thought. It suggests that it simply isn't simply a powerful flame emitter Kirk, like Endeavor, but there's some kind of restoration ability attached to it, like a phoenix rising from the ashes.
Yeah.
And what did it say? It was a specific name. Dabi's alias is a reference to a Buddhist cremation ceremony of the same name. In Buddhism, cremation is preferred because the physical body means little to the religion's belief. Since Buddhism believes in reincarnation, the body is nothing more than a vessel for one's soul and will not be needed in their next life.
Which is interesting because again, he starts out as Toya, and what you're essentially saying is he's reincarnated as the villain Dabi. So
Yeah,
that's very interesting. Like him having like a hidden region quirk is an interesting theory. I kind of feel like this chapter may have uh dispelled that idea because they talk about how they spent so much time trying to bring him back to life, and that's where we are going to kind of pick up here. We see the Dr. Ichiko in a jail cell kind of talking about how All for One went after warped seeds, right? That he could serve as his vessel. And to me, that's one of the most interesting parts of this arc, of this story arc here, is that All for One had backups, Isaac. That is just
yeah,
so it makes sense, but like he basically had his own school, right? His own UA. And if Dobby didn't burn that place down, like Anakin Skywalker, we could have seen Class A versus All for One Villain Academia, right? The true villain academia, which kind of feels like missed opportunities there on Horikoshi's part, but it's still just a really cool idea.
I
But
mean,
sorry,
how should sorry, but let's also face the fact that the more characters you include, the more you need to cram out, if that makes any sense.
yeah, I guess my thing is, and maybe this plot point comes back up. Maybe it comes up in a time skip spinoff sequel where this hypothetical like villain academia that All for One has. What if they're like the Akatsuki, right? And there's something that Deku has to deal with even after he beats All for One, and they're led by Shigaraki or a new threat that goes into the sequel series. I just think there's a lot of potential there that they could have used in this story, but also they can push towards the future if he wants to go that route. Um, but also, I just want to point out, like, you see Toya's corpse, right? It's just ablaze, and we see this guy in a suit and a hat walk up. That's the same guy who walks towards Tenko's house, right? Tenko Shimura.
I believe
So
so.
that's All for One, which is just insane to me because this is probably roughly around the same time. I feel like Dabi and Shigaraki are around the same age, like 22, 24 or so, which is just wild to think about. But it gets crazier. So we see Toya wake up in this nursery hospital bed type situation. And it's been 3 years. He's been in that coma for about 3 years as they try and bring him back. And you see sort of some of the background images. I wasn't able to get the manga panel in time for the live stream today, but in the background, it's the same room Overhaul was in one of the manga panels during the Overhaul arc. So can you believe that Overhaul might have been in this exact same situation before he was taken in by the Yakuza?
Probably, considering his Kirk, he more than likely was
Yeah.
On the big chief's mind, so to speak.
Yeah, it feels like he's got his hands in every situation, like All for One does. At this point, I'm not surprised if you say All for One is the reason they faked the moon landing, because he just seems to be involved in everything. It's crazy. But
it's like what's Illuminati? He's the Illuminati of My Hero Academia universe.
Right, he is the one man Illuminati. It's insane. So one thing that this is the heartbreaking part for me. I don't know about you, but like seeing Toya like distraught about how he lost so much time, how he's gone through puberty basically in his sleep. His voice is different. He's taller. He's disfigured, but he wants to go see his family. He wants to see Endeavor. He still has so much to show Endeavor. He wants to prove that he could become a hero like Endeavor. And that is just heart wrenching, man. It's just so painful. It's just so painful. And so he that's his main goal, is to get back home, apologize to his mother, his siblings, make things right, go back to normal, but also see how they're doing since he's been missing for 3 years, right? Have they changed? Have things gotten better? Can they have a normal life? And he gets there and he sees his in memorial picture and wall, but then he still sees Endeavor abusing Shoto, just reminding him of how nothing has changed, how his life doesn't matter, and how he was easily replaceable. And that's just so dark, man. It's again heartbreaking. It's so sad. Like, again, you are a big fan of the Todoroki story. What are your thoughts on this new development for these characters?
Well, it makes me want to quote unquote semi spin off of the family situation even more. To be honest,
Mm-hmm.
And also, I don't know about you, but this last panel of Dabi that you see, the last two,
Yeah.
that makes me think about the comment that Horikoshi did recently. And that was the fact that he said he wants to do horror after this. And I'm just, yeah, yeah, you should do horror, buddy.
These last two panels are terrifying. But before we get deep into what's going on there, we see him kind of again heartbroken, and he pulls a Batman, right? Bruce Wayne died that day Batman was born. On this day, Toya was officially dead. He's even paying his respects on page 15 at the Toya shrine, and it's basically like, yeah, I'm just Dobby now, and he's going to destroy everything Endeavor loves dear.
Which makes the whole Buddhism connection even more, honestly, if you really think about it.
Yeah, yeah, it's a rebirth for Toya, for Dobby, I should say, and it's just crazy. And one of the craziest bits to me in this story is that All for One couldn't contain him. Right, this is the one failure I feel like in All for One's entire like scheme and everything going on here. He's had setbacks. He's been beaten by All Might, but like he could not account for Dobby. He thought Dobby was going to die in a year, and his hatred kept him going until he can see the day Endeavor dies. So I know you, Leo, Ren, and I have talked about this multiple times. What happens in this fight? Does he kill Endeavor? Does he mortally injure Shoto? Like, what do you expect to happen from this point on?
I think he's going to try to kill. No, he's going to kill Shoto, trying to kill Shoto. Endeavor gets into last minute. He takes out Endeavor with him.
Yeah, it's interesting because they're purposely broken up in these groupings. So I'm trying to think of a reason why Endeavor would end up at this battlefield. But yeah, like I can see that happening. I feel like Shoto is going to have like I don't know how Shoto combats this. I know before, like a couple weeks ago, I said that Shoto's more powerful than Dabi, and to a point, I still believe that. But again, Dabi's will has kept him alive this long. His hatred has kept him alive this long. And like you pointed out, Isaac, these last two panels, he is just engulfed in flames. He's melting the All Might statue. Like you noticed that, right? He's standing on the fist, and the fist is melting down. I hope Shoto's sympathy and love for Dabi doesn't end up costing him in this fight, because he's gonna have to give it everything he's got.
At this point, his compassion for his brother should be, I need to take him down so he suffer, because he basically has no human flesh on his body at that point. It looks like in the last panel.
Yeah, he's just falling apart, and it's crazy to me. This is why Dabi is such an interesting character, and his quirk is so interesting, right? He's the only one besides Aoyama whose quirk was given to him, and Deku whose quirk was given to him. He's the only one whose quirk seems to have this much of a negative effect on his body. Like he can't contain his own flames. And we know it's mostly because of the injury from what happened 11 years ago. But still, like he's falling apart. He's bleeding every single time. So he's going to just implode, I feel like, very soon. But if he does, I think he's going to try and take Shoto with him.
Absolutely. Yeah, I agree with you 100%.
Was there anything else you wanted to get into? Like, I think there's a lot of interesting backstory stuff here too, like him and Dr. Dr. Uchiko talking and questioning why he's back with the League of Villains. They're both kind of feeling each other out because he's not the prodigal son for All for One, but like he's the one who got away, killed all the Padawans, and now he just comes back to be part of Shigaraki's crew. do you think he's also going to try and take them down as well? Because he was never, empathetic towards Twice, and he is trying to like manipulate Toga at times. So do you think he made enemies with everybody in the story? He just wants to wipe them all out, or is it just he used them to get to Endeavor?
I think you're pretty much on point in the last part. He used them to get to Endeavor. He would. I think you were pretty much sure that you wouldn't be able to go to Endeavor if you were alone,
Mm-hmm.
so to speak. It might be
Yeah,
powerful,
a
but
means to an end.
it's sort of like I wouldn't go so far to say the enemies of my enemies is my friend kind of stuff, but it's because he's indifferent to them. He really it's clear that he doesn't care about himself or anything else. The only thing he cares about is revenge.
Yep. And again, that's what makes that scene when he goes back to the house so sad, right? Because there's a part of him that wanted everything to be okay, but he just snapped because he was a child. He was a fragile boy with an abusive dad, and it ruined him. Endeavor created one of the biggest villains of this generation.
That's an understatement.
Yeah, and he was trying to make a hero that rose to the top, similar to All Might, but he ended up creating a villain that's closer with All for One. And honestly, Dobby, he might be one of the smartest characters in the entire series just because of the way he manipulates the situation and understands everything that's going on. Like, I don't want to understate that he and Deku have a similar level of understanding and intellect of the situations they're in, which I think is really fascinating.
Absolutely agree. He is to some. There are you say that if he was stronger, he would almost be due to his intellect. If he was on par with Shaggy in his with his fire flames,
Mm-hmm.
I would say that he would be more dangerous than Shaggy due to his intellect.
I'm with you there because I was about to ask you this too. Like, a part of me thinks if everything went as All for One had hoped, would he have been the successor instead of Shigaraki? Or would he have been like, he would have raised the two together to be like his right hand to Tomura Shigaraki as they overthrow the world?
Probably the latter,
Mm-hmm.
considering the whole. Even though his intellect is tempting, I figure that Kirk that Shige has is what's it called? Decay
Decay?
Kirk.
Yeah.
Is more tempting in terms of raw power.
It is. It definitely is. Because again, I feel like as strong as Dabi is, I still think Shoto's flames, like his potential is higher simply because he has a built-in cooling system with his ice. So I feel like on the whole, Shigaraki probably is more tempting, especially after his quirk awakening from the villain academia arc. And so, all things considered, it probably worked out the way All for One would have wanted to anyway. But I want to ask you guys in the comment section, if you're in the live stream, what are your thoughts on this week's chapter? Are you excited to see what else we get from Dabi and the rest of the Todorokis? Do you think Endeavor somehow gets mixed up in the scrum and has to fight Dabi with Shoto and Burnin? That would be a very interesting way to go about it. Isaac, was there anything else you wanted to say before we call this one an episode?
It's more of a speculation part of.
Yeah.
It shall be interesting to see how Bones animate this chapter, so to speak.
I feel like Bones is gonna have to just up the rating on season 7 and 8 of My Hero because it gets more and more twisted as each chapter goes on, and I don't know how you start working your way around it. I want to know though, because speaking of how they adapt this stuff, they cut that scene where All for One visits Tenko's house last season, which I feel like is a shame because that comes back in this story, or how they cut out Overhaul in that like nursery type room in the Overhaul arc, or how
I
they cut
totally
out,
forgot that. Honestly, I totally forgot that. Honestly,
because it was a manga only shot. It's not in the anime. So that's my point, is like all of the stuff that they cut plays a factor into this chapter. And so it's like, that's disappointing. There's no fixing that. You're just gonna have to ignore it, which is a shame because I feel like that's the stuff that's the most interesting part of discussing chapter 350. I don't know. That's just me being the lore whore that I am.
aren't we all?
A little bit. But yeah, I think that wraps this episode up. Again, that was My Hero Academia chapter 350, Bound to a Fiery Fate. My Hero's on break next week, but we're not. We still have tons of stuff coming out here on the Amateur Otaku podcast. So make sure you guys are subscribed so you don't miss a thing. We're posting almost daily here on the channel, so there's bound to be something that you guys enjoy. Isaac, where can people find you on Twitter?
Well, you can find me over at Emblemaniac on Twitter, and you can find my work over at Amateur and Wobum Entertainment, and you can find a pod over the Amateur Otaku Pod. We are pretty much everywhere besides Podbean, where our usual stuff like My Dress Up Darling, which is about to release. It was one of the dumbest episodes we recorded for the most hilarious reasons, but that's besides the point. And but stuff
Nice.
like stuff like My Hero Academia, Attack on Titans, manga and chapter reviews, those are exclusive here on YouTube.
Awesome. My Dress Up Darling is such a great show. I hope you guys check out that episode. It's going to be on the podcast feeds as well as here on the channel. So if you listen to the podcast feed, please do us a favor and give us a rating on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. It really helps us out. As far as myself, you can find me at Novice on Twitter and youtube.com/Novice, where you can find all my videos every single week. Legend of Korra's 10th anniversary is this week, so I have a video about that coming up. So check that out over there. And as always, follow us on Twitter at Amateur Otaku Pod, where we're talking My Hero Academia all the time, because that's what we do here. We're basically a My Hero channel at this point. But
or
until
close
next
to
time,
it at least.
very close to it. With that said, have it awesome, you guys. You take care. Go beyond.
Plus Ultra.